Hi guys, it's James from Dirty Finger Racing. Today we're going to be upgrading the speed control in my Losi SCTE 2.0. We're basically going from the stock Losi rebadged Mamba Max to a Rx8 Gen 2. So basically this is my truck. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to be removing the speed controller. So we'll go ahead and do that. We're going to be doing this video in real time so that way you can see about how long it should take for you to do this install. Pretty much I just got to disconnect these banana plugs. Already removed the sensor wire. And now then we just got to pull out this. I actually use Velcro, so it's easily removable and replaceable. Over here on the receiver, we've got to pull out the throttle wire, and so it's going to be the one on top for the Spectrum SR201. Basically, you just got to get a hold of it, wiggle it back and forth, and then it'll come right out. Undo the twist, and then we're going to get it pulled out. Alright, and now as you can see it is completely removed. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reach over here and turn on the soldering iron, so that way you can go ahead and get it hot while we're planning out how we're going to run our wires. Basically, as you see, I haven't installed any Velcro on here yet, so that way we can go ahead and just stick it in and kind of get the idea of what our options are as to how we're going to run the wires. Really, whenever you install it, you want to make sure, one, that you're not going to have too many kinks or too many hard bends down here on your soldering post. And you also want to make sure that you're going to have these two buttons right here accessible, as it's a way of tuning the speed controller without having to use the hot wire. So basically what I'm thinking is, for my setup, the best bet is to go ahead and install it to where the posts are on the inside, because when I try to put it this way, it's basically kind of pinching on it, and only the back bottom corner is going to be sitting on the Velcro. So alright, now that we kind of got the idea of how it's going to sit, we're going to take the wires that we're going to use and make sure that they will run. Like I said before, I use banana plugs. This just makes it a lot more convenient to be able to pull the motor for maintenance. I mean, at some point every motor is going to need maintenance. So basically you just want to make sure that you can take your wires and stick them in, and then that they're going to reach. These wires that I have right here, they've already got the female banana plugs on them. I did these for another project and didn't actually have to use them. I'm going to be using the supplied wires from Tekin. They're 12 gauge and silicone covered for the battery post. So really I don't need the white wire, it's just going to be an extra one for me. And then my batteries, they come installed where they're back here, and then run them all the way forward. And then I use Dean's connectors. So the second post is your negative battery post, and then the fourth post from the front is your positive. So as you can tell, between the battery wire and these two wires, it's going to be more than enough. What you want to make sure is that you have plenty of play, but not excessive play in the wires, because as I had a hard lesson learned in a points race, if the wires come unplugged, your truck kind of dies in the middle of the race. In my case, it was on the first lap. So since we already know what we're going to be doing here, go ahead and set the entire vehicle off to the side. The next thing that we're going to do is run through the tools I'll be using to use this. First and foremost, soldering iron. I've got one that's got a high and a low to it. A lot of people have a variable one. This one was like 20 bucks from Radio Shack. It works great. I like to use on low setting, so that way you don't end up overheating the post. And then we'll also go through a way of avoiding overheating the post, because really with this thing being encased, you can't see how much damage you're actually doing down here. And if you guys have soldered any of these wires before, you know that if you hold them back here, your fingers are still going to get hot. So the heat goes both directions, not just up the wire. What we're going to be using, we got a good pair of needle nose pliers, a pair of regular pliers, and then some snips. We've also got our hobby knife, a lighter, using a 60-40 rosin core solder. A lot of people still use flux. Rosin core just makes sure I don't need to use flux. It still works perfectly fine. And then of course our wires and heat shrink. We have the fan that we still have to install. We're going to do this last, as whenever it slides in, it's going to be almost up against the backside of these posts, and there's no reason to install it up because you're more than likely going to melt the fan first. And then we have our Dean's connector. And alright, that being said, we're going to get started. Alright, the first thing that I want to do is get this Dean's connector out, and then we're going to tin it. Basically, I just use the pliers as a way to hold the electronics, or the little connectors and plugs. We're going to go ahead and take off maybe 1/4 of an inch, a little more, a little less. And basically all you got to do is take it and roll it around. Yeah, you can use wire strippers or just a regular old knife or scissors, as long as you're careful doing it and don't cut out too much of the wire. What I like to do is after I get the wire cut, I'll take it and twist it. And that way it makes it to where it doesn't fray out as easily. Then we're going to do the same thing for the black wire. Basically just give it a good roll, pinch it with your fingernails and give it a tug, and it should be coming right off. If it doesn't, just go ahead and give it another roll with the hobby knife and it'll come right off. Alright, now that we got our wires cut, ready to be tinned, we want to check the soldering iron, make sure that's nice and hot and not wrapped around everything else. Now, you just have to be careful while you're using the soldering iron. It is hot, it will burn you. So just use care whenever you're using it. Best way to test it before you start touching it to everything and waiting is just make sure you can hit it with solder and the solder will melt. Before you tin anything else, it is important to make sure that your soldering iron itself is tinned, as it actually helps to make it to where the solder will melt faster. So what you're going to do is just basically set your soldering iron down, let it heat up the connector, and then just feed in the solder. Yes, right now it's not hot enough. So if that's the case, just pull it away, let it cool down a little bit. Otherwise, what you're going to end up doing is you're actually going to melt the plastic around the Dean's connector. And then what ends up happening is the solder itself will actually run on the inside of the Dean's connector through the plastic and get behind these little metal spacer springs, and then end up making it to where it will not be usable. It takes a lot of work to try to desolder from underneath that metal spring. So, I'm going to try this again. Get the connector nice and warm. And there you go. Alright, now then we've got it connected. As you can see, we got a little bit too much solder on it. So, easiest way to fix that is go ahead and hit it with a soldering iron, let it melt back down, and there you go. And it's back off. I know what you're thinking, that's a lot of solder for tinning, but man, yeah, it is really, but it's actually going to make it a lot easier just to get the wire stuck to it and make a good solid connection. So, I'll roll out some more solder. And then we're going to tin the other side. Now then on a Dean's connector, your vertical, which is this one on the outside, is your positive. The flat or the horizontal is your negative. Now then, we're done tinning the connector itself. Go ahead and just set that off to the side. And then all we have left to do is go ahead and get these wires tinned up so that we can make our connection. You can use things like helping hands or whatever to hold the solder and the wires, but I find it easy. Just bend the solder, heat up the wires, and then what you're going to do is you're going to hit the solder with a soldering iron, and you're going to see it start smoking and melting up. So now then you've got solder on the wire. You just want to make sure that you've got solder running all the way around. So while you're running your solder, just kind of roll the wire. And there you go. As you can see, I've got a wood surface here. This is actually covering a plastic table. Just because of drips like this, it'll hit the wood and it will not melt into the wood like it would the plastic. Another way that you can do your tinning is you can use a pair of pliers, hold it up. The wire's not going to go anywhere. Now what you're going to do is you're going to heat up the tip right here, and then you're going to use your other hand to run your solder. And basically you're just going to run it straight down into the soldering iron tip, and it just kind of runs off. Then you just got to work it around a little bit to make sure that you've got it fully tinned. As you can see right here, there's really no solder there. So just flip it over, hit it from the back side, and kind of roll it back and forth. This will help bring solder around to that side. Alright, there we go. It's nice and tinned. So that being done, next thing to do is grab your Dean's connector. By now it should have cooled off enough that you can hit it, grab it up with your hand. Again, what we're going to do is we are going to take the needle nose pliers and get a hold of it, just leave them laying there. Then you're going to take your red wire for your positive and then just place it on top of the solder. Use your soldering iron to push down. Just a little bit of force. You don't need a whole lot. Let the solder melt. And then once it melts, just hold it for a second. And then you'll have a nice connection. Got a little extra solder up here. Just go ahead and melt it off. As you can see, it did disrupt our connection a little bit. There we go. Got a nice solder. Alright, the negative one is a lot more simple. Basically, just take the pliers, lay them on top of the Dean's connector. Of course, it's going to want to roll, unless you got this other wire connected. And basically, you can also hit the solder down here on the post first, stick your wire to it, and then it'll melt right down onto it. Alright. Now before we run our heat shrink on here, it doesn't matter what color heat shrink you use, it just has to be able to fit over the end. Go ahead and set this off to the side for a little while, let it cool down. And while it's cooling down, we're going to go ahead and cut the tips of these wires, and then we're going to get everything tinned up for our speed controller. Alright. Grab your hobby knife. Depending on how you want to run these, you got two options. You know, you can set them in here horizontally, or you can set them in here vertically, or you can, you know, just pick an angle and go with it. Really, what you want to do is just cut off enough right here at the end of the wire, so that way you can get a good tin job on the wire, and then get it to sit nice and flush inside the post. Now that we got all this tinned up, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tin all of our posts. Basically, you've got your A, B, well it goes A negative battery, B positive battery, C. So you just need to make sure you know which wires you're going to be running where. Go ahead and just stick your soldering iron down into the post and let it heat up for a second. And then you're going to take your solder and run it down on top. Now what's nice about these posts is you get a connection on 3 sides rather than just a flat connection. Now like I said before, you know, we're going to make sure that we don't overheat down inside. So we're going to do the first one, then we're going to do the 5th one. And then what this is going to do is end up letting it have time to cool without building up a lot of heat on either side. So now then we can come back and we can heat up your negative post. And go ahead and get the solder down in there. Then we can go back and we can do your positive post. As you can tell, it really does not take a whole lot to get this solder to melt. So just try to do it nice and quick. Now then, you know, since we heated it up on both sides right now, then, you know, obviously this one's going to be a little bit warmer. So just take a few seconds and let it cool off. Good. There you go. Now we got all 5 posts tinned. And now we're going to go ahead and tin our wires. Really, for my wires, I'm pretty sure that anybody can tell which wire goes to A, which wire goes to B, which wire goes to C. So having to have a red, black, and white wire really doesn't mean all that much, because my A and my C wires are both red, My B wire is black. And it's a lot cheaper to buy 2 colors of wire compared to 3 or buy 1 color. Alright, that wire's tinned up. That's something that you're going to want to do with these wires. Since they're going into those slots, you want to take them and try to crumple them down a little bit and make them nice and flat. So that way they will easily fit inside of the post. So that way now we can set them down in like this, or we can plug them straight in from the top. Alright guys, sorry about that. I know we promised that we were going to do this in real time. However, if you'll notice, we've not done anything. My camera lady had some technical difficulties. She was standing locking her knees out, so she felt like she was about to pass out. Situation's under control now, so we're going to try to push on and get this done. Where we left off, I just finished tinning the last wire. So now everything's sufficiently cool, including the camera lady. So the next thing that we're going to do is, as you can see, we've got really, really long battery wires. Alright, we do not need the wires this long. I kind of measured beforehand whenever we were doing this. That's how I was going to run it and everything, so that way we can try to keep this video a little bit shorter, because it is going to be a long video doing it real time. So basically, this is where we're at. You got your negative in the front, your positive in the back. So it's going to be about like this. Whenever it's all done. Alright. Now then, we're standing the wires on the post, and as you can see, it more than reaches all the way to the back. So basically, where I'm going to cut this at, I'm going to give myself about an inch or so of play going off the black wire. Now then, keep in mind that the battery is going to be here, and the plug itself reaches up to here. So cutting it right here, right after the faster, since I'm using the Tekin wire, it does have their motto on it: smarter, smaller, faster. I'm going to cut it right after this faster on here. And then but first I'm going to cut the red wire right after where it says 12 AUG or 12 gauge for the red wire. And to do that, I'm basically just going to take the needle nose pliers, as they have wire cutter on them, and give it a good squeeze. And there we go. That's cut. I'm going to go right here. I know you're thinking, alright, the black wire is significantly shorter than the red wire. There is a reason to my madness. Alright, whenever we have this soldered down, alright, the wire itself is going to bend backwards. And it's going to be about like this. Well, now my plug is even. If I was to try to do them both even, it'd make my plug kink, and it could actually cause undue stress to the soldering joint itself. Well, now we got 2 more wires. Soldering iron is still up and running. So we'll get these ends cut off real quick. And get these soldered up. One thing I just noticed I have not done, other than onto one of those wires before our technical difficulty, was flatten the wire. So we're going to have to go back a step here in a second and get those wires flattened out. And when it comes to flattening the wire after you soldered it, you want to make sure that the solder is still warm. Otherwise, you're going to have a King Kong grip to get that wire flat. So let's go ahead and get the red wire out of the way. Grab that black wire with the minimalist pliers. Get it standing up. And then go ahead and heat it up. While that solder is still soft, we're going to have to go ahead and pinch it. Alright, see, it's nice and flat there. So this will make it really, really easy to solder it into our Rx8. Next, we're going to go ahead and get that red wire set down. Solder. Tip to good soldering: make sure that your soldering iron stays clean. So go ahead and set it down there for a couple seconds. But go ahead and start heating up that wire. Solder likes to run to whatever is hottest. So there you go. Go ahead and check. Make sure everything got a nice good 10. If you twist the wires like I do, make sure that you run the solder around the wire in the same direction. Otherwise, you're going to get that fraying. Nice good squeeze. And now we're flat again. Alright, now as you can see, these wires did not get smushed. So basically we're just going to take this and heat it up. It's nice and warm again. Get back in the pliers and give it a squeeze. There we go. And then if you're not one to watch this full-length video, we will be making an edited video where it's a lot shorter. We'll do like the first wire of each step, and then we'll cut away, come back, and go to the next phase of the process. Alright, now that we got everything tinned and ready to go, something to keep in mind if you're running the ESC SCTE 2.0, whenever it comes to your sensor wire. Yes, you get a sensor wire with your Pro 4 HD, however, it is significantly short. appears to be like a 6-inch or 175, 200 millimeter wire, and I'll pull it out and see it for comparison. Here it is, right? It plugs in back here at the back of the motor and then it runs up. Now then, on most vehicles, this will be more than enough. I mean, if you're putting this sensor wire in, say, a B4, it's more than overkill. If you're doing it in an 8.2E from a Team Associated, you know, it's more than sufficient. However, I got this wire, I think it was like $7 or $8, including shipping, from tqwire.com. It's a 300 millimeter in length wire, and as you can see, for the RX8 to the motor, it does give plenty of play. So this does extend your options as to how you want to run it. I like the play, so that way, you know, I can, you know, refrain from having a lot of kinks in my wire. The shell with this, plenty of coverage. You know, it's not going to come out, so. But the first thing that we're going to do is move that back out of the way again. You know, alright, so let's go ahead and start back here. Alright, so, you know, like I said, you can do this to where you put the wires in where they go sideways or up and down. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to run the wires to the motor in a vertical setup while I run the wires going to the battery in a horizontal setup. So that way you just don't have a huge mess of wires. And this will let the wires for the battery run underneath everything else and make a nice easy connection to the battery as well. So when it comes time to do this soldering, you know, like I said earlier, make sure this soldering iron is clean. That way it gives you a good connection. I'm going to wipe it off, roll it around. It'll heat right back up. So go ahead, hit your soldering post. This solder will melt like butter. So then go ahead and get everything set. And basically just take it, set it on top. It's not melting right now. Just be prepared that you might end up having to play with this wire a little bit, get everything to melt down. Alright, it looks like we've got it melted down in there pretty good. Well, it was melted down in there, and you do not want to be doing that. gonna switch out wires. That one's getting very, very hot. Guess I didn't have my wires smushed enough, so. Now hopefully it's sufficiently smushed. You've probably got this one back here very well heated up by this point. So go ahead and we're going to do the A wire. There we go. That one took a little while. So, since that one's done, we're going to go ahead and move to the B wire, which is your third post. B wire's done. Go ahead and heat this wire back up. Then we're going to smash it down one more time. And now then we're going to get our C wire on there finally. If you want to test your connection, just give it a nice little tug. B wire came off. You know, it happens. You know? It's better that it happens here than it happens in the middle of a race. So now then, we just got to reconnect the B wire, and this time get a good connection. And again, we failed. Not sure why. So let's go ahead and just heat this wire up by itself, and then smash it back down again. Alright. We'll heat up this soldering post again. Now then, it's connected. Let's go ahead and make sure that when we place it into the car, it's not going to be in the way of anything. Looks like we're going to be running right underneath the servo and right into the plugs. Alright guys, sorry about that. Our phone filled back up again, and that's what we're using for our camera right now. So we went ahead and got the videos off of it to make some more room. So we're going to try to pick up right back where we left off. The only difference, as you may see, is right now I actually did go ahead and zip tie down these wires right here while we were on hiatus. Basically all we got left right now is to hook up the sensor wire. Go ahead and get it started. Press down and on both sides so that way you get a good connection. And once it's in there, give it a little bit of a tug so that way you know it's not coming out. Then make sure you press back down on it. Alright. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install this fan. Now then, wire wraps underneath here and then pushes out. So when you slide it in, you want to slide in this wire first. Try to get it up towards the corner because the fan port is up there next to the sensor wire. And then you're going to guide this in. Basically, you're going to have to try to wiggle it back and forth to make it fit, because it's a good tight fit, which is what you want. Alright, now before we plug it in, I'm going to take these black screws that come in the thing. There's some smaller little silver ones. Not really sure what they're going to go for, because as you can see, these black screws right here fit in just fine. So we're going to push it in. That wire, the wire up here on the fan is going to try to push it back a little bit. You want to do the ones that are on, well, for me it's on the inside of my truck first. They are 2mm screws. So get out your 2mm driver or Allen key, and let's get this first one started. Don't tighten it down all the way just yet. You want to go ahead and you want to get all 4 screws started in, and make sure you keep the wire out of the way of the threads so that way you do not end up damaging the wire. All right. Now, the reason why you're leaving them loose, so that way when you get them in on one side, you can still get them in on the other. Which I did not leave this screw loose enough. And just push them back. This screw, you can go ahead and get it tightened down to your liking. The way this basically works is you're threading the screws into the plastic of the fan. See, those little silver screws aren't going to do anything for you. Now then, you've got the all 4 screws started. Go ahead and tighten them down. Now then, your fan's not going to go anywhere. Now then, you just got to take this wire, loop it down, and plug it into the fan port. Now then, it is slightly keyed here, so the best thing I can tell you is that the black wire goes on the outside. So just kind of loop it down. And this is a little bit of a tight spot to try to finagle this thing to get in there. So just take your time and get it down in there and get it plugged in. Every time I seem to have it started, it does not want to go in. Alright, there we go. It's in there. And then if you want to, just go ahead and kind of pull this wire up out of the way. Alright. Now then, that is how you install the RX8. The only things that are left to do at this point are plug in the battery and then go through the calibration procedures for your controller. Oh, my camera lady is pointing. Alright, here we go. It's just something I didn't mount this. Really, pretty sure she can figure this out. You know, it's actually a pretty good design. It actually has this little extra hole right here, so you can take a screw and you can mount it in anywhere you want instead of just these two holes right here that come on most of them. Really, I'm just going to take some tape, and I'm either going to mount it right here. I'm probably going to mount it right here. You know, it's just a little piece of servo tape. You know, I'm pretty sure that y'all can figure that one out. So, yeah, this video has become quite long, which was not anticipated. We will make an edited video to slim this one down. But if you got any questions or comments, you got one of these, and you know you need some help getting it set up, shoot me a message, and I'll be more than happy to try to get you pointed in the right direction. Anyways, stay tuned for further updates from Dirty Finger Racing, and y'all have a good night.